अस्सलामुअलैकुम वरहमतुल्लाहि वबरकातुहू। प्यारे भाइयों, कैसे हैं आप सब लोग। एक और ब्लॉग में आप सबको मुलाकात करने आया हूं मैं। प्लीज़ लाइक एंड शेयर सब्सक्राइब टू माय यूट्यूब चैनल ताकि आने वाली तमाम वीडियो आपको ऑन टाइम मिल सकें। आज हम IRC इस्लामिक रिलीफ ऑफ कनाडा के फंक्शन में वीडियो कैप्चर करने के लिए आए हैं। ये गाज़ा के लिए डोनेशन इकट्ठा कर रहे हैं। आई होप आपको ये वीडियो पसंद आएगी। तो चले आइए प्रोग्राम देखते हैं और प्लीज़ लाइक एंड शेयर एंड सब्सक्राइब टू माय यूट्यूब चैनल। चलिए। Assalamualaikum. How are you guys today?
We're good. Walaikum salam. Alhamdulillah. How are you?
Alhamdulillah.
Yeah, to support orphans in Palestine, and thanks so much for everyone coming and supporting a great cause.
Thank you. Assalamualaikum, brother. How are you?
Walaikum salam. Alhamdulillah, I'm good. How are you?
Alhamdulillah. What are you selling today?
So we're here as Hub Al Haya. We're selling jubbas. We have men and kid sizes, Omani, Emirati. This is just some of the samples we have. We have a lot more on the website. You can check it out right here.
And what's your website?
hub-alhaya.ca.
Okay. Jazakallah khair.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Jazakallah. Assalamualaikum, brother. How are you?
Alaikum salam. How good? Thanks.
Alhamdulillah. You're here at Islamic Relief function today. What is your stall regarding?
It's motor jewelry.
Okay.
It's different jewelry.
What type of
rings.
jewelry is it?
It's gold plated. 24 karat. Rings, necklaces, earrings.
Thank you. Jazakallah khair, brother. Thanks. Go ahead.
Assalamualaikum. We are here to collect donations for the orphans in Gaza, and we have these beautiful vendors here selling the Palestinian gear, all to help the Gazans in Palestine, all going to a great cause. We have scarves, kaftans, bahoud, beautiful items.
Jazakallah khair for your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
MashaAllah, it smells really good.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Assalamualaikum. Here we have a lot of different vendors. At our station, we have different variations of honey, all locally sourced in Canada. And then at this station over here, we have various different kinds of African jewelry and different trinkets as well. Inshallah, you'll find something for everybody here. Assalamualaikum.
So this sister is selling her calligraphy paintings. She also have a donuts.
We're Kahwa time, and we have cookies here that are going for donation for Palestine with Islamic Relief, inshallah.
Mashallah.
We also make coffee, and we make tea with mint.
Mashallah.
We usually have chai as well, but today we don't.
Right.
Assalamu alaikum. This is basically the bookstore run by my wife and my daughter, and we are selling Islamic books as well as books for kids young age, and a lot of activity books as well, and the cards and puzzles. And we'll be today donating towards the Islamic Relief Fund for Gaza as well.
Jazakallah khair. Salam alaikum. This is something stall it's for nursery. They're all the kids stuff like baby clothes and stuff like that here.
Tonight, our event is focusing on raising funds for Palestine, for the people who are trying to survive in the worst of conditions. And your help tonight can help change their lives for the better, inshallah. But before we get to that, I would like to start off this evening with a Quran recitation, which will inshallah be done by our local Qari from Toronto, Qari Shahi Noor. There is more to Qari Shahi Noor than what meets the eye. At the young age of 15, he was given the honor of leading the congressional prayers at the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem, Palestine. In 2012, he qualified as a Qari with the authority to recite the Quran in all 10 different dialects and is now recognized as one of the top reciters in all of Canada. And in fact, we also have here today Qari Shahnoor's professor, Sheikh Islam. And as you will notice today in his recitation, Qari Shahnoor has a very unique style of reciting multiple verses in multiple dialects with a single breath. So with that said, please put your hands together and welcome Qari Shahnoor.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والضحى والليل إذا سجى ما ودعك ربك وما قلى وللآخرة خير لك من الأولى ولسوف يعطيك ربك فترضى والضحى والليل إذا سجى ما ودعك ربك وما قلى وللآخرة خير لك من والضحى والليل إذا سجى ما ودعك ربك وما قلى وللآخرة خير لك من الأولى ولسوف يعطيك ربك فترضى والضحى والليل إذا سجى ما ودعك ربك وما قلى والضحى والليل إذا سجى ما ودعك ربك وما قلى وللآخرة خير لك من الأولى وللآخرة خير لك من الأولى لك من الأولى سوف يعطيك ربك فترضى. صدق الله العظيم.
Shahnoor for that beautiful recitation and to set the tone for our event. I would now like to welcome Ibad Rahman, the chair of Islamic Relief's Board of Directors, to the stage to say a few words.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. First, I'd like to thank you first and foremost for being here. I promise I won't take long. I just really have a few introductory remarks to give. I begin by praying that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept from all of us, and that this gathering be accepted as a gathering of illumination, of light and acceptance. Second, I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala remove the tyranny and oppression faced by our brothers and sisters in Gaza, and for all of our brothers and sisters, and for all of those who are suffering around the world. It's an honor for me to speak for a few minutes, and my message today is really a reminder to myself and to thanks all of you. First, for the reminder. As you know, organizations like Islamic Relief and many other relief organizations, they've worked tirelessly throughout the world and in war zones and in disaster areas. And the work never stops, and it hasn't stopped for decades, and it has predated almost all of us here. But what we're seeing today is something that most people who are seasoned field veterans have never seen in their lifetime. We are seeing effectively the annihilation, the death and destruction of a people, of an infrastructure, of their identity, of their culture, and their belonging. When we find ourselves going down and sort of thinking about why this happens, keeping and taking into account that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always in control, we still find ourselves in a state of despair and despondency, right? Even among the best of us who have the highest levels of iman, we question, why is this happening? And I had the benefit and the privilege a few weeks ago of attending a talk with my son from Dr. Yaqub Ahmed, and I wanted to share a few of his words which I think resonated and reflected with me, and I hope they do with you as well. And for those of you who don't know, Dr. Yaqub Ahmed is a British-trained historian, an Ottoman expert who lives and teaches in Istanbul. And he made a few points that were very pertinent for me. His main theme was that our ummah has gone from victory to loss time and time again. And what we are living through is not new. It's new for us, but it's not new for our ummah. And as a few examples from this, he specifically spoke of when the Seljuk Turks defeated the Byzantines and Sunni Islam had made its inroads during those days. That was a big victory for Islam. But it was only 28 years later that Jerusalem fell to the Crusaders. But 90 years later, Salahuddin Ayyubi retook Jerusalem. So we went from victory to loss to victory. Another example, when Muhammad al-Fatih conquered Constantinople, we all know what that meant today, and we see what that means today. But it was 20 years later that when Muslims were expelled from Spain. Again, from victory to loss. And what we were speaking about is nothing new, but we need to be able to contextualize and take lessons from it. And from this, I take two lessons that I wanted to remind myself and my children first and foremost about. The first is that as an ummah, we have been here before, but we don't stop our efforts, whether they be of collectively, and inshallah, they're all of the above, and more, of dua, of zikr, of Quran, of advocacy, and outreach. And I see some of the best advocates sitting here to my left, and inshallah we will introduce Dr. Ben at the appropriate time. But what we don't know is what needs to change, and that's the key. But what we do know is sincerity in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only leads to good. Second, our children need to understand the behavior that we want them to model. But to be able to model a behavior, we need to let them learn our history. Our history is one of resiliency. Though they're seeing Gaza, they see Sudan, they see Bangladesh, they see India, they see every other country where Muslims seem to be in peril. They need to understand that as a people we have overcome and we will overcome again. And it's our job to teach them our history and not to let history teach them. The reflection on this for our children, and I would just sort of take a little bit of a segue here. Last year, my family and I had the honor of seeing for ourselves an Islamic Relief trip where we joined a group of volunteers in Turkey, just as observers. And for us, what was the greatest reflection on that was the sincerity with which all of the volunteers, the participants, the field workers, and anyone connected to the organization acted. And it's this sincerity of intention that I think we need to instill in ourselves and our children, but it's that sincerity of intention that I know and I see here tonight in you coming together as a community. And this reminder of our intention leads me to a word of thanks. I have supported the organization and the work it attempts to do, and we will continue to do so, including what you will do tonight. I thank you for your dedication, I thank you for your sincerity, I thank you for your efforts, and I thank you for your trust. Your trust in us means the most to us, and if there's any reason you have any questions, all of us here involved in the organizations are happy to answer any questions you have. And for our children, I say to you, inshallah, that you have many an opportunity, inshallah, to partake in good work. But remember, our history is one of strength, courage, resiliency, but what comes with struggle. I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept from all of you and reward you abundantly, and I pray that our efforts to please Allah tonight and beyond in these times of adversity are recorded in our books, and most importantly for our brothers and sisters in Gaza, Allah alleviates their suffering through whatever small effort we can make. Jazakallah khair.
Jazakallah khair, Ibad, for those inspiring and important words. You know, it leads us perfectly into who is coming up next. This night is all in support of Palestine, and I'd like to turn it over to someone who can speak to what is actually going on the ground right now. I'd like to welcome Dr. Ben Thompson, a physician, distinguished academic, and outspoken advocate who has shown a commitment to advancing humanitarian policies and equitable health care. He commonly travels outside Canada to do humanitarian work, and most recently in Gaza. So please welcome Dr. Thompson.
Next slide. This beautiful Palestinian girl, Reem, was 3 years old. She was sleeping peacefully in Gaza next to her 5-year-old brother, Tarek. Reem loved her grandfather, Khalid, so much. She would pull his long beard, he would twirl her curls, both of them laughing. But at 3 a.m., she was sleeping peacefully. An Israeli airstrike hit her home, crushing her small body and killing also her brother Tarek. Her grandfather woke up screaming, only to find them crushed to death. In an act of humanity well documented across social media, Khalid picked up Reem's lifeless body, stroked her hair, blew the dust off her face, crying that she was the soul of his soul. Now, I had been to Gaza in September of 2023. So when I went in March, just a week ago when I left, I had a recent visit, so I knew what to expect. Like many of you, in the last few months, I have lost loved ones in Gaza. But what did I expect? Next slide. What did I expect? Well, I was reading it was a crisis on October 13th, and I was there in March. So by then it was at least an emergency or at least a disaster. Human rights groups have been saying this for months. Now, I've been going to Gaza since 2013. The picture on the bottom there is my first visit with Minister of Health, Dr. Mofid Mohammadi, and rest his soul, also with Brother Tariq Nabani and Brother Nabil Sultan. Since that time, I've been to Gaza over a dozen times. I expected the worst in March, but it exceeded my expectations. Next slide. Families displaced. Another Nakba. This family came from northern Gaza with nothing but each other and the clothes on their back. I met them in the Mawazi refugee camp in Rafah, where they were living in a tent. The man on the left is Ahmed, he's an engineer, and on the right is Basma, a pharmacist. They had a house close to the Indonesian hospital in northern Gaza, which was one of 26 hospitals that have been bombed by Israel. They left. They don't know if their house is still there. It may or may not have been bombed. They're hoping to find out when they return, if they return. Next slide. This is Mawazi tent city in Rafah. This is the area that Ahmed and Basma moved to. This area was meant to accommodate 1.5 million people fleeing parts of Gaza to Rafah. The area has one toilet for every 800 people. You see it on the right. It's a block of cement with a hole in the middle. There's no doors for privacy, no light. Nowhere to shower but the sea. Raw sewage is being drained into the sea. So, to no surprise, there's a very high rate of diarrheal illnesses and skin infections. Next slide. The density of people in the camps is at a level I've never seen before. Gaza is already one of the most densely populated places on earth. Now with 70% of the population living in a very small strip in the south, without sanitation, clean water, food, people are desperate, hungry, with infectious diseases rampant. Next slide. I was there to complete a World Health Organization assessment for non-communicable diseases, so things like diabetes, blood pressure, cancer. Perhaps the most memorable case for me was Reem, an 18-month-old girl who came to my clinic without eating or drinking for weeks. She had a massive liver and spleen. I could feel lymph nodes. Her blood work was minimal. I couldn't get very much, but what I could get was suggestive of a blood cancer like lymphoma. I wanted imaging. I wanted an MRI. In September, there were 3 MRI machines in Gaza. Those have all been bombed. In September, there were 5 CAT scans. 4 of them have been destroyed. One of them, in the European Gaza hospital, is awaiting a part once that is approved by Israel. Well, what if I could just do a biopsy? Well, I would do a biopsy, I'd send it to a lab, a pathology lab. It would be read by one of the 2 pathologists in Gaza who could read it. This is what I would do in September. Unfortunately, that lab has been bombed. The 2 pathology doctors who could read that biopsy have been killed. Next slide. So this poor girl, Reem, couldn't have her cancer diagnosed, and even if she could, the hospital that manages all adult cases, the Turkish Friendship Hospital, has been bombed and destroyed, and the hospital that managed all pediatric cases, Rantizi Hospital, has been bombed and destroyed. So this young Reem, she's as much a victim of genocide as the over 30,000 people that have been killed. She now awaits Israel's approval to leave Gaza, hopefully to Qatar or perhaps Jordan for diagnosis and management. But only 1 in 2 females that applies is approved. So there's a good chance that even as I speak at this podium today, that she's no longer with us. Next slide. The hospitals, well, they're not recognizable as hospitals. The picture on the left shows 2 internally displaced brothers who are now sleeping at the entranceway of Al-Aqsa Hospital. This is their new home. On the right-hand side, you see tents, and more tents for internally displaced people, families, entire families, multiple families living in a tent, sometimes with severe injuries. It's worse in the emergency room. People who are lucky can live in the hospital, and they live in the emergency room. And of course, there's no beds to move people from the emergency room, so it's overwhelmed, overcapacity. I saw a young man who was hit with shrapnel in the head. His skull was caved in. Injuries were not survivable, but he was still alive. So in the corner of the emergency room, where we were able to put a curtain on one side of him. He died on the floor, in a pool of his own blood and brain matter. There were no pain medications, no space for family. He died alone. That was as dignified a death as we could provide him. Next slide. This is a photograph of Rafah. You see the food building on the right-hand side, hundreds of people lining up for food in front of it. These people will be lucky to get 1 meal in a day, and many will have no meals on that day. You see there's a lot of children in the line, many of whom are there alone. Many of these children are orphans. Next slide. In September, this picture would have been impossible. This area didn't exist. There were 3 cemeteries in Gaza in September. One was dedicated to foreign soldiers that were killed in Gaza. The 2 others were relatively small plots of land, and initially with the increasing death toll, graves were being dug up so that family members could be buried with people who were already in the graveyard. That very soon became impossible, and so this area was created, which is a graveyard close to the beach in Rafah. And you'll notice in the distance there's tents, literally immediately adjacent to the cemetery. People are living amongst the dead, despite themselves living in conditions that are barely livable, with no water, no food, no electricity, living in a tent, with their future uncertain. Many of you hope this picture isn't what you're probably thinking it is. It is what you think it is. And this picture only shows a third of the area where children are buried. Many of the gravestones have multiple children buried in them. One of the hospital directors I know, named Talat, 3 of his 4 children are buried here. He and I went to the grave where his children were buried, and we both wept. Next slide. I've told you about the misery. I've told you about the horror. But that's not what people in Gaza want you to think of when you think of them. The man in the middle is named Talat. He's the hospital director I told you about. The day after his wife was killed, he went to work. I asked him why, and he says, well, people in Gaza don't have time to mourn. And he also said to me, if I stop serving my people, what would that say to my last remaining son? Every night, we would spend time together. His son would read the Quran to us. He needed that human connection. But he was still working, hopeful for peace, loving of all people. Next slide. What I saw in Gaza, while at times horrifying, also made me incredibly hopeful. Gaza's commitment to their neighbors, friends, and loved ones is unparalleled. They serve as an example for all of humanity to emulate. On the left is a woman with her children in Khan Yunis. If we still have family, we have everything we need. On the right, carrying her younger sister, because children grow up very fast in Gaza. You'll see them smiling all the time. We hear about the trauma and suffering, but for children, they love, they give, and they prove to all of us that people in Gaza will always demonstrate humanity, resilience, and kindness. Next slide. Now, despite having no water, limited food, despite being out of school for months, children are still children. These children are smiling, they're happy, they're playing, they are hopeful for a future in Gaza. In this picture, there are future doctors, future architects, future mothers, future fathers, neighbors, and our current children. Gaza's children are our children. Their humanity is our humanity. We are not free until they are free. We don't have justice until they have justice. So your advocacy, your donations are in the right direction. Next slide. So this is Reem, and I almost tear up telling this story, but she was a 4th year medical student at Islamic University of Gaza. This is the university I've been teaching at for the last 10 years. She was living in northern Gaza until she and her family were displaced. Not once, not twice, not 3 times, 4 times her family was displaced, each time in a tent, finally arriving at a UN shelter in Rafah, where she, both of her parents, and her 3 younger siblings now reside in what used to be a school library, but is no longer functioning as a school. Her father was an architect, mother was a family doctor, and they have, if they're lucky, one meal a day. Reem's medical school future is uncertain, as her university has been bombed and completely destroyed, as have most hospitals where she might train. And yet, this was how she always looked, always smiling. She was volunteering at a wound care clinic in Rafah as a medical student. Midway through her studies, she was already suturing better than most Canadian residents would be suturing. And I asked her the question that many of us have stopped asking: how are you doing? Well, we're still alive. We're still together. For this reason, we are lucky in Gaza. I asked her if I could give her anything at all. And she says to me, I'm fasting. You aren't fasting. I should be giving you my food. That level of kindness, it's hard to fathom under the circumstances. So if you need a reason to give tonight, think of Dr. Reem. She proved their humanity to the world over and over and over again, anytime they're asked. Tonight you need to support their right to self-determination with your donations. Efforts to rebuild Gaza start here tonight. It starts with you. It starts here, and it starts now. Next slide, and I promise you this is the last slide. So I told you I was the luckiest man here tonight because I was in Gaza in March. In addition to that reason for my luckiness, this is a man that I met that many of you will know, Khalid. I recognized him sitting next to a tree on one of my hospital visits. And through a translator, he told me some words I want to leave with you tonight. We spoke for about 10 minutes. I expressed my great sympathy for the loss of his granddaughters Reem and grandson Tariq. But he told me, I love people everywhere. Canada, America, Gaza, anywhere. I love people because Muhammad and all the prophets love people and want peace. This is what we want in Gaza. We want love and we want peace. So ladies and gentlemen, you, before you came here tonight, had seen the suffering and the pain. But that is not what the people in Gaza are focused on now. They are living, they are resilient, they are filled with hope, and they are filled with love. Tonight, your donations can bring food, water, education, and love to the people of Gaza. Our brothers and sisters in Gaza need your support, and I believe it is our duty to provide it. With much love and peace, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Thompson, for sharing your first-hand experience. And thank you for giving stories and the reality to the faces that we see on the news every day. I'd like to now welcome our esteemed keynote guest, Ustada Aisha Prime. Just a few quick words about her, but Ustada Aisha, I'm sure, is not a stranger to all of you. She's a world-renowned speaker, scholar, and activist. She is the founder and executive director of the Yadaru Project and currently serving as the at-resident scholar and curriculum director at Islamic Society of Baltimore. The work that she is most committed to and enjoys have been the development of Islamic programming, Islamic studies curriculum, and rites of passage programs for youth and adults. The majority of her life has been spent as an educator and an activist. And as if these things don't keep her busy enough, she is also the proud mom of 3 children, mashallah. So without further ado, please welcome Ustada Aisha Prime.
Jazakallah al-Khair for inviting Islamic Relief. I want to thank, of course, all of the volunteers. Don't forget to pray for them. Pray for their hands. May Allah bless them. May Allah keep them strong. I want to say a big Jazakallah Khair to all of you, to you donors, subhanAllah, for supporting Islamic Relief for the last 40 years. For making sure, subhanAllah, that our brothers and sisters all over the globe, whether they're in Somalia or Kenya, bringing about clean water, or subhanAllah, Yemen, for the humanitarian crisis in Yemen, or for helping, subhanAllah, those in Afghanistan or in Syria and Sudan, all over the globe, you have been standing with Islamic Relief to make sure that our brothers and sisters know that they're not alone. In this moment, subhanAllah, as our brother Ben Thompson, as Ben Thompson just detailed for you about just all of the horror, and that we see it, subhanAllah, on our phones every day. The feeds come up, and we're an everyday witness to the literal horror that our brothers and sisters are experiencing on the ground. And so, subhanAllah, when we look at them, we say, what is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put in them, that even in their moments of hunger, even as bombs are dropping, even as they watch their children burn under white phosphorus, even, subhanAllah, as their bodies are broken, and literally, subhanAllah, orphans are increasing by the minute, they still have a high level of resilience, a high level of courage, and a high level of faith that no matter where you are, subhanAllah, I was recently in England, and people were converting to Islam literally by just seeing their faith. Literally, subhanAllah, within this week, the time that I've been here in Canada, the amount of people that are coming to Islam as a result of just being a witness. For just being a witness to their steadfastness. So when I look at them, I say, subhanAllah, Ya Rabbi, we think that we need to come to their rescue, and we do. But their faith, subhanAllah, the light that is shining from their hearts, from their sincerity, from their steadfastness, the light that is shining from them is literally piercing through our own darkness. It's letting us know our own weaknesses, our own fears. They're not afraid. SubhanAllah, I was watching a little boy about 3 or 4 nights ago. One of the images came up on my screen, and there was a boy standing outside of a gate, and someone came and was like interviewing him, and they asked him, like, if you had the chance to leave, would you leave? And he looked at them with like this stare of like a stare of like I can't even explain it. It's like a stare of such strength, right? And just said, I would never leave Gaza. I would never give them the satisfaction. So they said, why, ya Habibi? Like, if you were given the opportunity to leave this place, like, wouldn't you leave and leave a life of freedom? He said, why? He said, well, because I would be afraid of death. I'm not afraid of death. He said, I'm not afraid to die, but I will not abandon my land. I said, subhanAllah. He had to be about 9 or 10 years old. And as I was looking at that, I said to myself, Ya Rabbi, I know the level of reward that you will give them. You proved it, subhanAllah, literally already when the Prophet ﷺ experiences the moments of Ta'if, when the Prophet ﷺ, he himself is persecuted, so just for the fact that he wanted to bring Islam to them. He wanted to make a relationship with them. And when he came, literally, subhanAllah, they sent him out and they told him, listen, you better get out of here before it turns dark. For what we're going to do to you. They literally brought, subhanAllah, all of the worst of society to line up on the sides of the pathway that exits the city. And they begin to throw stones. And I'm not talking about like a few stones, right? I'm talking about they begin to pelt the Prophet ﷺ literally to the extent that it felt like it was raining stones. And as the beloved alayhi salatu wasalam would drop his head, subhanAllah, he noticed that some blood was trickling from his face. And then he began to notice the blood soaking of his sandals. So he took off his turban and cleaned the blood, and then bent down, subhanAllah, to actually stop the blood in his sandals. And as he was doing that, Zayd actually covered him more and said, Ya Rasul, and he said, I have to make sure that my blood doesn't touch the ground, because I know that if my blood touches the ground, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will flip this city upside down. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will destroy them. I know who I am. I know who Allah azza wa jalla is. And I'm not concerned about myself, I'm concerned about them. The Prophet ﷺ gets into the outskirts when he exits, subhanAllah, and he raises his hand and he makes that amazing dua where he says, Ya Rabbi, as long as you're not displeased with me, I don't mind. As long as I know that you're not angry with me, whatever, I don't mind. I complain to you of my own weakness. I complain to you about I'm going to send you to Masjid al-Aqsa, where you're going to lead 124,000 anbiya in salah. Now wherever, subhanAllah, when you're standing there, there is either a prophet or an angel that's praying with you, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Wa barakna hawla," that I bless the entire region. So thinking about the connection between this type of struggle, this type of steadfastness, but also this type of mercy, that then the reward for that was to send him to Jerusalem. I thought, subhanAllah, ya Rabbi, what a Mubarak place. What a place that you blessed. But then I ask ourselves the question, what did we do to defend it? What did we do to live up to be the inheritors of it? What did we do, subhanAllah, for the people of Jerusalem, as the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, like what happens, right? What Allah, how Allah will deal with them, inshallah, they'll be guided, they'll be Muslim, but what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is concerned about, are you pleased with me? Ya Rabbi, have I done the actions? Have I done the prayers? Have I given the sadaqah? Have I shown up in the way that you will not call me to account? That's what we have to be concerned about. We have to be concerned about whether or not Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, will we be from those when Allah gives the narration, think you didn't visit me? How come when I was hungry you didn't feed me? How come when I was left out you didn't come to me? And then we will say, Ya Rabbi, you're the Lord of the world. There are those, may Allah save it from being us. The person will say, Ya Rabbi, you're the Lord of the world. When were you hungry? When were you naked? When were you in need? Allah says, your Muslim brothers and sisters, they were hungry. They were in need. They were naked. They were orphaned. Had you fed them, had you granted them comfort, had you come to their rescue, you would have found me. Constancy. So for us to recite Surah Al-Waqa, إِذَا وَقَعَتِ الْوَاقِعَةُ لَيْسَ لِوَقْعَتِهَا كَاذِبَةٌ خافضات رافعة إذا رجت الأرض رجا وبست الجبال بسا فكانت أنبثا وكنتم أزواجا ثلاثة فأصحاب الميمنة ما أصحاب الميمنة وأصحاب المشأمة ما أصحاب المشأمة والسابقون السابقون أولئك المقربون في جنات النعيم. That in this moment in Surah Al-Waqi'ah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is describing a horrible scene. He literally describes catastrophe and calamity falling down around us. He literally describes that the mountains will crumble and crush till they look like wool. And we know that, subhanAllah, when we look at the bombs dropping in Gaza, we see how their land is destroyed. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, but in the moments at the end of time, in the moments where there are calamity, there's a shifting out and you're in three categories. Either you become the people of the lantern, the people of despair, there's nothing we can do. They're falling down into a defeatist mentality. Oh, we've lost. Oh, woe is me. There's that category. There's another category who is saying, I see it as an opportunity for me to give sadaqah. I see it as an opportunity for me, subhanAllah, to help my brothers and sisters. But then, and they receive their record and their right hand on the day of judgment. They're the people who go to Jannah. But there's another group of people. They're the sabiqoon. They're the ones who are foremost in faith. They're outstripping everyone else with their light. They're the ones who are near and close to Allah. Who are they? Who are those people? Those are the ones who are throwing the dunya behind their back and they're only asking, Ya Rabbi, let me be found doing exactly what you want me to do. Let me be found being the person that you want me to be. Let me be found to be amongst those that on Yawm al-Qiyamah you would allow us to enter into Jannah without hisab. Why? Because we passed our test. Because we passed the test of wealth and privilege. We understand what we were supposed to do with Allah's blessing. That only a few of them from the end of time prove that you wish to be from amongst them tonight. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum.
आई होप आपको वीडियो पसंद आई होगी। अगर पसंद आई तो प्लीज़ लाइक शेयर एंड सब्सक्राइब टू माय यूट्यूब चैनल ताकि आने वाली तमाम वीडियो मिल सकें। पार्ट 1 ख़त्म हो गया है तो इंशाल्लाह नेक्स्ट टाइम मिलते हैं नेक्स्ट पार्ट 2 में इंशाल्लाह। अस्सलामु अलैकुम व रहमतुल्लाहि व बरकातुहू।